And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what? China. All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese.
China.
Russian.
Russia.
Italian.
Italy.
German.
Germany.
Swedish.
Sweden.
Korean.
Korea.
Egyptian.
Egypt.
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Black.
Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
I'm so glad you're here because you can bring great clarity. Can you tell us a little bit about the Sephardic Jews and how they were scattered because they went west?
I sure can.
Because the reason why I want to is because a lot of them, and a lot of people don't know this, are in the Caribbean.
They are.
In the islands.
And you're one of them. I know that.
I'm one of them.
I know that.
Because, you know, a lot of folk don't know that those roots are there. One of the first batches of slaves that came to Jamaica, they were the Sephardic Jews. It's documented.
And they're all over the Caribbean,
over
South America, Central America, and even the South Central United States.
Wow.
And DNA testing is a factor in all this now.
The white man is enacting a story all over the world. We left our homes and flooded the world. We smothered culture. We smothered knowledge. We erased history and rewrote it our way. Myself, my grandfather is 100% Ashkenazi Jewish. Claiming to be Jewish, Ashkenazi Jewish is just a conspiracy. White men claiming to be of tribes of Israel when I'm Germanic. You know, I have no ties to Israel, no ties to Judaism. You know, except loosely written history that's been whitewashed over for centuries. And, you know,
from the Renaissance.
Oh yeah, right. You wipe everything clean. It's funny how exactly the Renaissance. It's this rebirth, but it's white rebirth. I think at the same exact time the Renaissance is happening, Columbus is sailing to America and committing genocide.
We would not know how to live on the Sabbath if it were not for the oral law. We would not know what the laws of the dietary laws of kashrut are if it were not for the oral law. We would not know what the tefillin, what the boxes on our arms and heads that we wear every morning in our prayer service, what they're supposed to be. And in fact, all of Judaism would be completely mysterious. It would be voodoo if it were not for the oral law.
Genesis chapter 11 verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact,
Want to say Shalom Lak, Mash Paka. Want to say peace and blessings to you, family. If you could hear me clearly, type one. Just want to make sure my audio is working correctly. Let me adjust this a little bit. If you can hear me clearly, just type one. If not, type two. All right, let's see here. Make sure that my audio is clear. Great, great. Let me go ahead and update this ticker real quick before we get started. And appreciate you guys for tuning in tonight and trying to get back into the flow of really doing these lives because YouTube is doing a lot of crazy stuff to this channel here. They unsubscribing people. They really suppressing, going through that process again. I've gotten a couple of so-called threats to strike, and I've been, every time you turn around, I got a strike that I have to contest. So it's a lot going on. So appreciate you guys for tuning in tonight. Let me just put it in the header here. All right. And let me make sure I got this correct. And I'll rename it once we go over. All right. So let me start this ticker here. All right. So again, I want to say peace and blessings to everyone. And, want to give you, just really talk to you guys about a lesson that I gave. This is a lesson that I taught for almost 4 years in our ministry. The system to destroy our hope, identity theft. And this is a extensive teaching. I taught the same lesson for literally for almost 4 years. Same lesson, very in-depth. Kept going over it and over it again. Before we get started here, I want to encourage everyone. Thanks for Sister Carol for reminding me about the Hebrew class that I am teaching over at the Patreon account. It's We Woke Now. If you go to Patreon, and there I'm teaching ancient and the Israeli language. I'll just really give you the basic fundamentals with learning Hebrew, how to read Hebrew, and really giving you a historical overview of how the language got to where it was to where we are today, and giving you some clarity with sources, the difference between shalom and shalom, giving you sources to show and prove what the ancient Hebrew is versus what is called the Israeli language. Many of you guys heard me or hear me use the term Israeli when it comes to describing Hebrew, the so-called Hebrew that many are saying that they're teaching today. And there's a reason for that. And I give you sources on others who refer to this so-called Hebrew that is referred to as modern Hebrew, really give clarity that it should not be called modern Hebrew. It should not be called Hebrew at all. It should be called or referred to as Israeli language. Israeli, that word denotes those that are born in the territory of Israel, but are not blood descendants of Israel. Big difference. Those that are born in the territory, and but those that are not blood descendants, right? So they came up with the term Israeli. So there's a big difference between being born of the bloodline versus born in the land. And that's a whole nother teaching I'm going to get into. I haven't taught that in a while. I taught it internally. And some of you guys probably saw my comment, my last post in the comment section, explaining Ezekiel chapter 47, verse 20 through 22, dealing with the sons of strangers, giving proper clarity that sons of strangers, when it deals with inheritance, it has nothing to do with making Israel into a spiritual or an allegory so that way those that are not blood descendants of Israel can now call themselves Israelites. So I'm going to, I encourage you guys, read that post that I made. I gave some detailed information there. I haven't done that in a while to share those type of posts. But I want to give some shout outs before we get into it. Let's give some shout outs. And I, again, really appreciate you guys tuning in. But this lesson is the 3-year lesson, actually almost 4-year lesson. So I call it the 3-year lesson, though, rounding it off. But it was almost 4 years that I taught the same exact lesson. All right. Solid 3 years, right? Over 3 years. So I'll just go with 3 years, but it was almost 4 years. But taught this lesson to our assembly for all that time, didn't deviate from it, did exactly what the Most High instructed me to do. So before we get into it, let's give some shout outs. Let's do some acknowledgments here. I want to say peace and blessings to my brother, Jason Camford. I want to say shalom to you. I want to say peace and blessings, shalom. I'm not even going to butcher your name. Please type it in the comment section or send me a message, because I really appreciate your support, sis. And I just really don't want to disrespect you by not properly pronouncing your name. If you type it in the comment section, or the chat rather, moderators forward that over to me so that way I can write it down and make sure, even if I have to put it on my board. I have my board. Where's my board at? I have my board over here. Let me pull it up. Even if I have to write it on this board right here, right? So I can have your name on my board, so that way I properly pronounce your name and do you proper service, because I really appreciate the support you have given me. We Woke Now in the ministry that we have. Also want to say peace and blessings, shalom to Tiffany Gilbert, Yakobab. Want to say peace and blessings to you, Arab Tawab. That's right. My evening is good. So I really appreciate you. Stacy Pullum, Shalom. Darnell Blackshear, want to say peace and blessings. Robert Haynes, want to say shalom to you. Joy, really appreciate you holding it down in the love and support, even with the moderation. Cindy Clark, want to say peace and blessings to you. Shalom to you. Stacy Pullum. Nadia, I thought I had it. Nadia Yaz Light. I want to say shalom to you. Appreciate the support. Let's see, Sister Joy, appreciate you. I want to say peace and blessings to you as well. Keith Wilson, peace and blessings to you. Shalom to you. Dwayne E. Butler, peace and blessings to you. Shalom to you. My sister, Sister Carol, been a major supporter of We Woke Now, and even before I started We Woke Now, back over in the Facebook days. I really appreciate you, sis. Shalom to you. Tiffany Moore, shalom to you. Ayaba, Haya, excuse me. Nabaya'a. I want to say Salama Mishpaka to you. Let's see, who else do we have here? Nadia, yeah, got you. Appreciate you, sis, for the love and support. Actual Israel. I want to say shalom to you. Unorthodox daughter of Zion, shalom to you. Who else do we have here? Royal Street, shalom to you. Lemuria Johnson, shalom to you. Abiyah Judah, peace and blessings, shalom to you. Jamal McBride, shalom to you. Appreciate the support. Who else do we have here? Susan Gibney, excuse me. I want to say peace and blessings to you, son of a king. Peace and blessings to you. Shalom to you. Jamal McBride, 1619. All right. Original Hebrew Nation. Angela Caraway, want to say peace and blessings to you. Love Yah. Peace and blessings to you. Cedric Lewis. James Thomas. Who else do we have here? Watchman Sha'ak. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, Shaka, actually. Watchman Shaka Yashara Al. I want to say peace and blessings to you. Let's see here. Ecobella, I want to say peace and blessings to you. Yeah, they really messing with trying to hinder this channel, not getting the notifications out. unsubscribing people. I get emails on a regular basis asking me why did I unsubscribe them and things like that. So this channel has been doing a lot of that. I want to say peace and blessings to my brother, Dr. Sean E. Carr Sr., Unveiling Truth. And I'll put an advertisement up for this Shabbat. We're going to have actually Saturday night, which will be considered going into the first day of the week. I'm going to have my brother on, and we're going to just have a great discussion here. All right. So I really appreciate you. And I want to add you to the moderators as well. So I'll make sure I do that before the night is over. But I appreciate you, Dr. CB. I want to say peace and blessings to you. Sharon Glover, want to say peace and blessings to you. This thing is starting to pick up here. I'm missing some of my, let's see here. Sharon Glover, I got you here. Let me put you here. Errol Spike, peace and blessings to you. Souls of our ancestors, really appreciate you, sis, and the outstanding work that you've been doing for us, really connecting different people within this awakening to really help those that have been in need. And I really appreciate all that you've done. And you've tagged me in a few times on really being an intercessor for some of our sisters, brothers and sisters that have been in need. So really appreciate all that you do and the support over this time. Really appreciate you. Much love to you. Lest any man boast. I want to say peace and blessings to you. Let's see here. Let's see. Pastor Kelly would really love to hear your take on what's being done to our people in Mason, Tennessee. Yeah, we'll actually, let's, if your schedule is available, we'll talk about that this Saturday night. We'll have Dr. Carr on and some other guests, and we'll talk about that. We'll make that part of the topic of discussion, but it's not surprising if we really start looking at the history of, even when we deal with Tennessee, there's a lot of stuff that, we can unpack in different areas in Tennessee. So we'll deal with Mason, Tennessee, and it's interesting when you see the name Mason, Tennessee, and we'll definitely shed some light on that. So if your schedule permits, we'll be here. We'll do it at 10 o'clock on Saturday night. So appreciate you, sis, and we'll definitely share my take on that. Appreciate you. Gloria Stewart, want to say shalom to you. Who else do we have here? Let's see. I think we got everyone. And if I missed your name, like the old school would say, charge it to my head, not to my heart. Oh, my brother. I can't forget Dr. My brother, Jay Highstyle. Want to say peace and blessings to you. Appreciate you, my brother. And DJ Brightside, caught you as I was getting ready to put my main presentation up. So let me go ahead and put this presentation up, and that way you guys could get a full grasp of what we're going to cover today, right? This section of this 3-year message, right, is dealing with call no one or no man master. Call no man master. And we're going to give some clarity because of, for the most part, when we teach this text, right, many will focus on the church, right? Many will focus on the Pope, right? We hear that a lot when many go into that text. Many will deal with the Baptist church because at one time the Baptist church, they still do it, had the titles of reverend or, so we want to deal with that. But it says, call no man master, call no man rabbi. So I really want to teach this from the angle of how I've taught this lesson over and over again. And the key is the system to destroy our hope. So there's a system, right? When you see the mark of man, the mark of the beast, rather, 666, right? That is a system, right? A system of man, right? Because man was created on the 6th day. So when you see 666, that's representing the system of man. And family, there's a system, even going back to what the souls of our ancestor highlighted was happening in Mason, Tennessee. And some of you guys probably saw some of the posts that I've been making. I'm very conscientious of some of the things that's going on with our community in the present as well as in the past, right? And some of you guys probably saw earlier this week, I made a post and I took images from Black Wall Street and I took images from the Ukraine, the bombings. And what I did was I took the Ukraine images and made them black and white. So that way it'll be a challenge to you. So that way it'll be hard for you to figure out which is which, right? So that way you understand the magnitude of what it means to be bombed, because Tulsa, Oklahoma was bombed. And that wasn't the only community that was bombed. As you see, I made a post about Philadelphia, right? Philadelphia, 1985, right? How the police department dropped a bomb on a group of our brothers and sisters there. They were just, in the same model of some of the, groups back during that time that was very aware and doing things for the community. And, they got bombed, literally got bombed. So, there's a number of things that is happening that is not new, that's still happening, to our community, that's still happening to our community. So Tulsa was bombed. And during the period where you could go from 1918 to about 1924, and it really highlighted, right, got to its highest when we look at 1919, which they refer to, the red summer, which actually blood summer. And one of the things that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, or some kind of way, when we reduce or we try to use the term, not we, but the media, right? The narrative is always called a race riot, as if it's a situation where as though, it's our community rioting, tearing up. Because when we think of riots, we think of, from the picture that's painted, as our community tearing up our community, when actually it was the Caucasians, it was the government declared war on all of our communities, and they were literally tearing up our communities. So we'll deal with that. We'll visit that, and we'll tie that in with the discussion of what's happening in Mason, Georgia. Right, we will really deal with that, because when you start really understanding what's been happening to our community, we talk about, when we talk about, for example, being one. Guess what? Our ancestors, guess what? They made it a point to be one. To come, before desegregation, we were operating as a very healthy community. And each one of the communities were thriving. And what happened? Got bombed. Right. So we'll deal with this again, dealing with the situation in Mason, Tennessee, and some of the other areas. All right. But let's go ahead and really get into this lesson here. The system to destroy our hope. Right. Call no man master. And guess what? This is going to help unpack or expose the tentacles, show you just how far those tentacles stretch of this delusion to suppress our community. Right. So again, we're good at addressing the church, the Roman Catholics, but there's another group we keep letting off the hook. Right. And I want to address them. I want to address this particular group. And I'm going to expose a few things, because it's just a lot of things that are going on right now among our community. And I need to expose a couple of things. All right. But anyway, the system to destroy our hope, called no man master. So we're going to start off with the question: what is enmity? What is enmity? Right? What does this word mean when you see enmity? Ayaba, right? This connector should be over here. So excuse me for the typo, because right now it read Aya or I-ba or I-ba ha, which really is supposed to be Ayaba, the ancient pronunciation, or I-ba, right? If you add any connectors, but it's ayaba in ancient Hebrew. So for the word enmity. So what is enmity? Right? When you think of enmity, what comes to your mind? You could type it in the comment section and I'll post it up here. Uh, Unorthodox, daughter of Zion, conflict, right? When you think of enmity, you think of conflict. All right. I want to say peace and blessings to my cousin, Ruhama. Family show my cousin some love here. She's just truly a blessing here. I want to say peace and blessings to Ruhama. And when you think about enmity, what comes to mind? J. High Style said opposition. Let's see who else here. William Smithers, enemy. Shalom, Sister Shalon, appreciate you here. Let's see, Charlotte Williams, enemy. Errol Spike, opposition. Souls of our ancestor, contention, right? Great comments, right? Strife, hatred, enemy, right? Racism, right? So you guys are all giving great answers, and you all are actually correct. Every last one of you guys gave a correct answer. And so I want to give you the definition of this word enmity, and I'm going to show you in the scriptures as well. So if we go to Oxford Online Dictionary, right, this is what it says about enmity. It says the state or feeling of being actively opposed or hostile to someone or something. All right, let me read that again. The state of feeling, or excuse me, of being, excuse me, let me read it again. The state of feeling of being actively opposed. So this is where you hear me say active hostility, right? The state of feeling, a state or feeling of being actively opposed or hostile to someone or something, right? And we as a community, we've been on the receiving end of this active hostility for a millennium, we could say, since the sacking of Jerusalem, right? 70 AD, the diaspora. We've been on the receiving end of this active hostility. We could go before then. We could deal with the Greeks. We could deal with the Syrians. We could deal with the Babylonians. We could deal with the Egyptians. We could deal with the Canaanites. We could go to all the ites, and we've been on the receiving end of this active hostility. And Psalms, the 83rd book of Psalms, really warns us and prophesies, gives a prophecy of the active hostility that the enemy, this crafty counsel, is going to come together to try to do what? Erase us from being who we are, our reputation. So enmity, ayaba, the state or feeling of being actively opposed or hostile to someone or something. And it gives an example, decades of enmity between the two countries. But we've been on the receiving end for, just in this country alone, over 400 years of active hostility, right? Now, when we start adding into when the transatlantic world war was implemented, we deal with the sub-Saharan slave trade, or I call it a war as well. We could go right down the line, but enmity means active hostility. Active hostility, if you want to sum it up, hostile to someone or something. And so there's a very subtle system that is designed to destroy our hope, right? And when you understand the Hebrew word for hope, the Israeli pronunciation is tikva. The ancient pronunciation is tha-kwa-wa, right? Which means lifeline, right? The primitive root, when you see kwa-wa, right? It means literally a rope, a cord, right? So when you hear the word hope, think of lifeline, because that's basically what it means, literally a lifeline. And so when you understand a lifeline, even if you look up the definition of it, think about a sailor or someone that's out in the water, right? And that rope that's there, if someone falls over ship, they throw what? The rope, and they may throw some other things to help try to save that person, but that rope, lifeline. Or when a boat is docking, right? Guess what? They'll take it, and wrap that rope around the pillar to secure it, to keep the boat from drifting off. So those are different angles of what the benefits of a lifeline, right? To help you if you're in a time of trouble, but also secure you to keep you from what? Drifting off, right? Drifting away. So the key with the rope, hope, the lifeline is what's on the other side of your lifeline, right? Who are you connected to? What is your lifeline connected to? Right? Is the Messiah on the other side of your lifeline, or you have some other stuff on the other side of your lifeline? So let's deal with this biblical key prophecy here, right? I want to really deal with this prophecy, and if you go back in the previous lessons of this, I really go into defining the word hope, lifeline, and we'll touch on it another time, but don't want to repeat myself in this lesson for the sake of time. So a key biblical prophecy I really want to highlight. This is Matthew chapter 24, verse 24 through 26. Right? This is a key warning that the Messiah gave to his disciples. And family, pay attention to the warning that he gave them. Then if any man shall say unto you, lo, here is Mashiach. Some of you guys will say Mashiach, but Mashiach, or there, believe it not, for there shall arise false Mashiachs. I know we see the word Christ here, but I want to put the Hebrew word there as well. Messiahs, false Christ, those that say that they're anointed, false anointed people that will try to prove that they are the one that the scriptures talks about, right? And I encourage you guys to watch the lesson that I did on words of confusion, and I deal with the difference between a deliverer and also a Messiah. And I really go into the details, studies of what it means, and prove and stand firm on our Hebrew Israelite Messiah that our brothers and sisters wrote testaments about. And we're going to deal with that shortly. But here it says, for there shall arise false messiahs, false Christ, right? And false prophets, right? And shall show great signs. And this is the key, shall show great signs. In other words, when you see the word sign, and from a Hebraic perspective, you'll see the word oth. Oth means proof, evidence, right? So they're going to give the appearance that they have this proof, that they have this evidence. They're going to have great signs and wonders. And so much that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. And the very elect we're referring to is Israel. So make a note of this text again. I'll read it one more time. Then if any man shall say unto you, lo, here is Mashiach, or Messiah, or Christ, or there, right? Believe it not. For there shall arise false Mashiachs, or false Messiahs, false Christ, and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, and so much that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect Israel. Verse 25. Behold, I have told you before. So this tells you that this was a warning. This is a discussion that the Messiah had regularly with his disciples, right? This is not the first time. And this warning is recorded in some of the other gospel. I like to say good news. I don't like to use the word gospel. Do the etymology of the word and you'll understand. Gospel actually comes from the word got, spell, right? And the Most High doesn't believe in charms, all right? Doesn't cast spells on his people. But anyway, the good news, right? But anyway, going back here. Behold, I have told you before. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, behold, he, in other words, Mashiach, the Messiah, the Christ, is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he, the Messiah, Mashiach, the Christ, right? With the article, the Christ. In ancient Hebrew, be ha, right? Ha, Mashiach, right? He is in the desert, right? And it goes on and say, go not forth. Behold, he, Mashiach, is in the secret chambers. Believe it not. Now, these is a very powerful prophecy here. Because when you start understanding desert, Madabar, right? That's isolation. And we see so many of our brothers and sisters pushing isolation to what? Give a false sense of safety in this country that we live in, right? The situation with Memphis, not Memphis, but Mason, Tennessee is a reminder. It's a reminder that they could take, when I say they, this government could take any of our property. Do you know how many of these Caucasians obtained their property here in this country? Property that we owned by what? Putting the fear in us, chasing us off, having us flee up north, just abandoning our properties. And guess what? They're taking possession of them. Taking hundreds, tens and tens, actually, I would say hundreds, probably hundreds of thousands of acres of land from our people easily. When you start understanding, for example, with, again, I know we talk about Tulsa, that's just a sample of one of many nations, I mean, not nations, but communities that they bombed. Right? When you study Tulsa, it was more to Tulsa than what you could ever imagine. Tulsa, they had oil. It was about the oil fields too, because of the wealth. It was supposed to be a piece of crappy land, but our people cultivated, showing that we are the true people of the books. Why? Because we're good with our hands. And guess what they did? They bombed that place. Why is Tulsa so significant? Oklahoma is so significant? Family, we're going to go through this. I'm going to make sure I teach this again, dealing with the Gullah Wars, right? Gala Wars, right? When you understand the Gullah Wars that lasted for over 80 years, the longest war, right, in this country, the longest war they don't talk about, right? They may call it the Seminole Wars, but actually it's the Gullah Wars against our people. The emancipation, the true Emancipation Proclamation that was given to our brothers and sisters that fought, that stood their ground in Spanish Florida. Guess what? They were allowed and given their freedom and a free passage, and they ended up moving from there through Alabama. This is where my family, for us, my grandmother, they ended up in. She ended up in Albany, Georgia, and actually that's a whole nother discussion. But then many of those people ended up going into Mexico. But guess what? A bulk of them landed in Oklahoma, Tulsa, right? So that's a whole nother discussion. That's a lot of history that we just have no clue about. But anyway, getting back to this point, and I'm going to pull back from going into my geek mode, because I'm trying to keep from going to geek mode, because I can go there. But it says here, behold, Mashayak is in the desert. So we have to be careful, family. And Tiffany Gilbert, guess what? See, your great grandmother was Gullah Geechee. Guess what? We all, and I appreciate you for sharing that, but I want to make it clear. We all, sons and daughters of slaves, guess what? We are Gullah Geechee, if you want to use that term, because that term was put on us, right? That term was assigned to slaves and sons and daughters of slaves that rebelled against the slave owners. That's what they used that term for. We're all the same people. Gullah Geechee is not a different people. The DNA is still the same, right? So again, when you see Gullah, that means redemption. Gullah means reveal. That's a Hebrew word. So, when you understand that term was actually a label that was placed on us to make sure that, hey, you know what? Those people over there rebelled. No, guess what? Our ancestors rebelled. We all are connected. We all are Gullah, right? We all, the Most High, have revealed his word to us, revealed his plan to us, and it's embedded in our DNA. So guess what? We all are connected. It's not these terms that can be used as barriers to make it seem as if we're different people. No, we are the same people. Those same people that you see was in South Carolina, North Carolina, Savannah, Georgia, the same people that was fighting in Spanish Florida. Guess what? Those same people that migrated from there to Louisiana and migrated further west to Texas and to Mexico, to Oklahoma, and guess what? Los Angeles, the true Los Angeles. Guess what? Those were our people. That's us, family. We all are still the same people. All right. So I just want to make sure that we have clarity on that. So we're all the same. You know, I know for example, Kwame Brown, he refers to, he make it clear that he's Gullah Geechee. But guess what, family? All of us are connected. We're the same people, right? Because our ancestors just didn't sit back and let these things happen. They fought hard. And that's how many of them gained their freedom well before Abraham Lincoln came into the picture. The original Emancipation Proclamation, right? And we'll do that teaching again. We'll do that teaching again. But anyway, it says, behold, he, the Messiah, is in the desert, right? Family, be careful. There's a lot of predators that's trying to get you to what? Isolate yourself. Say, hey, you know what? Salvation here, when it says the Messiah, he is in the desert, saying salvation here is in the desert, because the Messiah said that he's come for who? The lost sheep of Israel, right? To bring salvation to us. So these guys are operating in what is called a Christ complex, a Messiah complex. And so the key to these cults, right? The key to these cults that you see, like the David Koresh and some of these other ones, guess what they do? They talk down, they destroy the true Messiah so that way they can lift themselves up. They want to isolate you so that way they can introduce you to or indoctrinate you to their twist and sick, demented brain and understanding of the text. So it's saying, behold, be careful when someone tell you that, guess what? Isolate yourself, flee into the wilderness. Hey, we got a plan over here. Y'all better be careful, because when you read the text in its entirety, the Messiah said, if you are in Jerusalem, guess what? Flee to the mountains. If you are in your house, go to the roof. If you are out in the field, guess what? Run inside your house. In other words, secure wherever you are. And we learned that lesson here in this country, that we have to learn how to secure where we are. Our ancestors, guess what? During the Red Summer or the Blood Summer of 1919, guess what? The problem was for the Caucasians, the racists that was coming at our communities, is because there were well-trained Negro soldiers protecting our community, sniping those perpetrators that was trying to infiltrate our communities. So they had to increase their artillery and got military style weapons to like Gatling guns and grenades and dropping bombs from planes. Guess what? Because they could not penetrate most of the community. So they had to come up with a military strategy, right? With their weapons. That's what happened when you study Tulsa. But anyway, so it also says, go not forth, right? It says, go not forth, behold, right? Ha, the Hebrew word ha, the fifth letter. Some of you guys would say, hey, ha, right? Pay attention, behold, right? He, Mashayak, is in the secret chambers. Believe it not. This is an important prophecy right here. And we're going to break this down, and I'm going to show you why this is so important. So we see isolation, going to compounds and all this other stuff. The Messiah is warning us that, hey, don't get caught up in it. Don't get caught up in those delusions. But it says, go not forth. And he had to tell his disciples this repeatedly. Behold, he, the Messiah, is in the secret chambers. Believe it not. So the Messiah warned his disciples about the secret chambers. So let's deal with a little bit of the deception of the secret chambers. Let's start with the Greek definition of the secret chambers. Tamion, right? And this word, right? It means a chamber on the ground floor. But notice here it says secret chamber, closet, storehouse, right? Now, I hope you guys start getting an accurate depiction of what he's saying, because when we start looking at these secret chambers, think about politics, Think about those secret chambers. Think about Freemasonry. Think about those secret chambers. Think about some of the other communities and other societies or secret societies with these secret things going on. And guess what? When you deal with the temple, we're going to talk about some secret chambers even within the temple that was highlighted in the holy text. All right. So secret chamber, Hebrew definition of secret chambers. Let's see here. Right. You see here, Chadar, that's the ancient pronunciation, but you see Cheder, right? But anyway, it says here, innermost or inward part, right? An apartment, a chamber, innermost ward, innermost part. So let's go really paint a picture of exactly what the Messiah means. So what is the secret chamber? In these secret chambers, the true Messiah is removed to make room for another Messiah, right? I want you guys to go to Ezekiel chapter 8, verse 14, right? This is a very important passage right here. I'm not going to go through the whole passage. I encourage you guys to watch the lesson that I did on the globes, and I literally break down the entire chapter of Ezekiel chapter 8. But those in you guys that used to practice Freemasonry, you're going to know that this chapter shuts down Freemasonry. For those, and it exposes Freemasonry as well. Those that are practicing Islam, guess what? This chapter right here exposes Islam. It shuts Islam down. It shuts Kemet down. It shuts all those different systems, belief systems down, Hinduism down. But let's deal with this. I'm not going to deal with the whole part, but if you read it in its entirety, especially those that were in a fraternity or sorority, you're going to understand this text. Those that understand these secret societies, you're going to understand this text. Those that hear the term fraternal order of the police, guess what? They are a fraternity, right? That's a whole nother discussion. But anyway, let's go ahead and go to Ezekiel chapter 8, verses 14. This is Most High pulled the prophet Ezekiel by the lock of his hair. So this tell you that Ezekiel was proven that he was a brother man. He had locks, right? So the Most High pulled Ezekiel by the lock of his hair at the beginning of this chapter, exposing the perversions of the Levites, exposing the perversions of Judah, right? So, but it's going through the abominations, but now we're getting into the greater abominations, right? So this is as if you think about Freemasonry going to different levels. It also shows that there was a secret entrance, right? A peephole, so to speak, inside the temple. So this is where you get these secret societies from. The Messiah, when he says secret chambers, this is explaining to you what these secret chambers are and what some of the things that goes on in some of these secret chambers, right? So Ezekiel chapter 8, verse 14, this is what it says, right? Then he brought me to the door of the gate of Yahweh's house, which was toward the north, and behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz. See, if you guys understand, right, the Assyrians, right, and you understand Semiramis and all of that, guess what? Tammuz, you know, this is where you get the story about the boars, the ham, right? I could really go into that, but when you understand Tammuz was a Sumerian type of Christ for their culture. So you see, when it says these women weeping for Tammuz, guess what? They are weeping for another Messiah, a Messiah of the Sumerians, right? They're weeping for a Messiah from the Sumerians. They're recognizing Tammuz as being their Messiah. So the women is weeping for Tammuz. But guess what? It doesn't stop here. And if you understand the Jewish community as we know them, guess what? When you start looking at the period of July going into August, they refer to that period as what? Tammuz. They have, anyway, I'm not going to get into it. All right. Let me not go geek mode, but watch that lesson about the globes and I go into that portion of it, explaining Tammuz and how it's recognized in the Jewish community today. It's not a bad thing among that community. Right. So we'll deal with that. But going back here, it says, then he brought me, after seeing abominations, now this greater abomination, right? And this is like going through the degrees. Then he brought me to the door of the gate of Yahweh's house, which was toward the north. And behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz. So you have women here weeping, right? Tarrying for another Messiah. Guess what? That's happening among the people of the Most High. You got assemblies of our people weeping for another Messiah, right? Guess what? When you see that Caucasian Messiah, guess what? You're weeping for another Messiah, because that is an image of someone else, not our Messiah, not the true Messiah that the Most High has sent is going to send again. All right. So let's go ahead and go continue on this. The greater abomination. Notice what this says. Verse 15 and 16. It says this. Then said he unto me, hast thou seen this, O son of man? Turn ye yet again, and thou shalt see what? Greater abominations. See, when you understand Freemasonry and you start seeing these right here, these different layers here, you'll see the lesser lights, right? In the Freemasonry, the lesser lights, right? We know leading the way is the worshipful master, right? The worshipful master is part of that, the lesser lights. The scripture tells us that Hasatan disguises himself as a what? Messenger of light. And he has ministers. Anyway, so then said he unto me, and guess what? Islam, that moon, that crescent. Anyway, the circle 7, or the which comes from the Aquarian gospel. When you start dealing with the Moors and all that. Anyway, then said he unto me, all right, stop it, Sister Carol. I ain't going geek mode. Blame Sister Carol and Dr. J, J Highstyle, trying to get me to go geek mode. Then said he unto me, hast thou seen this, O son of man? Turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations. So what can be a greater abomination? Seeing women worshiping another Messiah. And I want you to pay attention to the playbook here. Right? Pay attention to the playbook, because when you read early in the chapter, the prophet saw that there were images, right, of idols in the temple. Then as he gone further, seeing greater abominations, now he's seeing what? The women, right? Notice this is the playbook. When you start dealing with these cults, they target who? The women, right? But notice what it says here. It tells us, thou shalt see something that's even worse, right? Greater things that's going to be terrible, profane things. You're going to see things that's going to make your stomach hurt. It's going to make you get queasy. He said, I'm going to show you greater abomination than this. Well, what can get worse? How can it get worse? Notice verse 16, right? Somebody asked the question, how does this shut down Islam and shut down some of Freemasonry and all of this? Well, guess what? And he brought me into the inner court of Yahweh's house. And behold, at the door of the temple of Yahweh, between the porch and the altar. Now, notice where they are. See, family, y'all understand here, the porch and the altar. We see the Messiah when he was going to honor dedications, right? You see him entering into this portion, right? You see Peter, and I believe it was Barnabas with him as they were going into this portion of the temple. Guess what? That's where they healed the man that had that asked him for money that was crippled. This is a very important area of the temple. So it says between this portion, the porch, right, where the prayers would go on in this side of the temple, right, between the porch and the altar were about 25 men with their backs towards the temple of Yahweh and their faces towards the east, and they worship the sun towards the east. Don't let Islam fool you when they thinking, having you believe that they're serving the same Messiah. No, the goddess that they serve is actually Allat. It's not Allah, it's Allat. Allah simply means the God, or Ailah. But you'll see Allat is the deity or the goddess that they served. Fact, right? Whole nother discussion on that. But it says here Their faces towards the east. They're facing the east, and they worship the sun toward the east. All right. So yet again, and again, when you're dealing with the Muslims, when you're dealing with Islam, right? Guess what? When you see that crescent moon and those stars, it comes from, those are the symbols of Alat. Look it up. So yet again, he's saying that, wait a minute, this gets worse. Right? Wait a minute. It says it gets worse. It gets worse. He's going to show you great abominations. So we see, right, the women worshiping another Messiah. We see that, let's go back here. I want y'all guys to pay attention to here. Look at the playbook. Now they see here 25 men with their back toward the temple, right? But it didn't stop here. What makes it worse? Now we're going to go to the top. We're going to go deal with the leaders of this pack, right? Who's pushing this. Let's see how it got worse than what we see here. How can it get worse than seeing women inside the temple worshiping another Messiah? We see 25 men in the temple with their back towards the east, facing the sun towards the east, worshiping the sun gods. Whoa, wait a minute. That's the sun god? They're worshiping deities in regards to the sun? UN? Oh, what's going on here? Okay, watch this, family. Let me show you how it gets worse. Yet again, thou shalt see greater abominations. Right? So we see that the men here, they had their backs towards the temple of the Most High. This is a sign of their rejection of Yahweh and their worship. Right? So let's go to verse 17 and 18. Let's see how it gets even worse. Then he said unto me, hast thou seen this, O son of man? Is it a light thing to the house of Judah that, notice what it says, the house of Judah. Now we're dealing with Judah here. We're dealing with the Levites here, but now we're dealing with Judah, right? That's right, J High Style. You hit it on the nail. You got Israelites trying to say that we have to face the east, to pray towards the east. That's absolutely incorrect. How can you pray to the east if you're already in the east? What direction do you pray to? If you're in the north, all the way at the north, how do you pray to the east? Anyway, we're supposed to pray for Jerusalem. But anyway, here we go, family. Thanks, J High Style, for bringing this up. Now, notice this part right here, right? Then he said, right? Notice what it says here, right? All right. Ambassador Black asks if this is this live? Where's the host? Guess what, family? Let me show you, Ambassador. Let me let you know that this is live, and let me show my face real quick. Right. So here it is. I'm the host. All right. So this is live. All right. So I'm saying your name to let you know this is not a premiere. I am live. All right. So let me bring it back and put this back up on the screen. All right. So I'm live, everyone. I am live. All right. Ambassador Black, I am live. Okay. So let's go back to it. Verse 17. Pay attention to this, family. Pay attention. Then he said unto me, hast thou seen this, O son of man? Is it a light thing to the house of Judah that they commit the abominations which they commit here? Notice what it says. For they have filled the land with violence. Wait a minute. Aren't we seeing that happen right now? Aren't we seeing that happen right now? A lot of these men are filling our communities with violence because of their behavior, their foul decisions. They're preying on the women. They're preying on the young men, have them pushing their agendas. Why? Because these guys are operating in a perverted spirit. And let me fill you in what you see on your screen. Then he said unto me, hast thou seen this, O son of man? Is it a light thing that the house of Judah, that they commit the abominations which they commit here? For they have filled the land with violence and have returned to provoke me to anger. And notice the last line here. And lo, they put the branch to their nose. Wait a minute. They put the branch to their nose. So wait a minute. So weeping for Tammuz, the women worshiping another Messiah, that was terrible, but it got worse. Then you see the men, 25 men, facing the east, turned their backs on the Most High, worshiping the sun god, the sun deities, and all his other deities, right? Now we see here, it says this is the height of it. This is the ringleaders right here. Filled the land with violence. And notice what this says in the last portion of this line. And have returned to provoke me to anger. And lo, they put the branch to their nose. You know what that means, family? In this text, this means that the men are behaving in homosexuality. The men are dealing with phallic worship. The men are having orgies among themselves inside the temple. When you start going to the top of these secret societies, when you start going to the top of these fraternities and sororities, when you start understanding what is the ultimate thing that they're leading the people into, sexual perversion. So we're dealing with phallic worship, right? Before we finish breaking this down, let me show you a quick clip and we'll get right back into it.
The 10 Sefirot. One popular interpretation shows these characteristics as a map of God's body. Kabbalists believe that if they can understand God's anatomy, they can learn how his powers work. These ancient drawings reveal that God's body is similar to humans. The top symbolizes God's head, which is the source of will, wisdom, and understanding. Below that are symmetrically arranged organs and limbs, representing love, power, beauty, eternity, and splendor. The most unusual part of the diagram contains sensual imagery. The ninth part of God, called the foundation, is the phallus, or procreative life force of the universe. But according to the Sefirot, God also has female components. The final element, often called Shekinah, was depicted as the feminine half of God.
Now, y'all heard that, right? Y'all heard that. So when you say the Shekinah or the Shekinah or the Shekinah, you're dealing with something that's not even biblical, which is supposedly be the feminine side of the Most High. See, in that 10 Sephirah, this is getting into what is called the Kabbalah, right? You see that chart, right? In that, you'll see that same chart in other mystical systems, such as Hinduism. They'll refer to it as the tree of life. You'll see that same tree in the mysticism of Egyptology. They all have a sample of that chart that you see there. In Judaism, Jewish mysticism, they refer to that chart as the Ein Sof, the 10 Sephirah, which is supposed to be the body part of their God that they refer to as Ein Sof, right? Ein Sof, in other words, the infinite one, right? And so they teach that in the beginning, right, this infinite one created our Most High. Created this infinite one, couldn't find himself, said he had to create all these things. Let me show you one more clip and we'll get back into it, and we'll finish dealing with this portion of the text of these secret chambers. Let me play you one more clip and we'll get into it.
This is how the Zohar interprets the opening words of Genesis. The Hebrew is Bereshit bara Elohim, which we usually translate, in the beginning, God created. But the Zohar insists on reading the words in the precise order in which they appear in Hebrew. Bereshit, in the beginning, bara, it created, Elohim, God. In the beginning, it created God. The The Zohar takes that to mean, in the beginning, infinity created God. Now, what could that possibly mean? God is now the object of the verse, not the subject, which sounds impossible or heretical, but the Zohar, I think, is saying that infinity is the true reality of God. Anything else that we call God is puny compared to that. That's our own imagination or our own estimate of what God could be.
Family, before I go on, I have to give the garbage can to this foolishness. In the beginning, it created God. That's not even in the ancient text. You will not see that anywhere in Genesis chapter 1 from the ancient Hebraic perspective, right? You will not see that. So when he said it, and he said the infinite one, that's the Ein Sof. They teach that their deity created the deity that we all know, the true Most High, Yahweh. Some of you guys may say Yahuwah. I'm not getting into the semantics. Go to the Patreon account. Go to the Hebrew lessons that I'm giving there, and I break all of that down. All right, but I'm going to deal more with that particular community. I'm going to deal more with that because when you understand Freemasonry, guess what? When you understand these Greek, these GLOs, Greek lettered organizations, all of them are going to take you to Freemasonry. All of them comes from Freemasonry. And ultimately, they're taking you to the worship of Gomer. That's what that G stands for, the worship of Gomer, right? And this stuff, I'm not making none of this stuff up, right? But anyway, going back here, where it says at this last line, they put the branch to their nose. Guess what they're doing? They're performing, they're sodomizing each other. I'll just leave it at that. These men they're pleasing each other, sodomizing, performing, profaning the temple. So that's why the Most High said it gets even worse, because now you have the men of Judah. And when you read Malachi chapter 2, they had to discipline the men of Judah for doing what? Treating the wife of their youth treacherously by going out here bringing foreign women. When I say foreign women, other women to their bedroom. Yeah, that's dealing with polygamy. I encourage you guys to go look at the lesson we did Saturday night. But here, Judah was performing homosexual acts inside the temple. Aren't we seeing that today? Every time you turn around, we hear someone, especially inside the church, doing what? Doing all kind of pastors coming out of the woodworks, pastors coming out the closet. And a lot of those people left Christianity and bringing that same spirit over into this awakening, right? So they put the branch to their nose. This is dealing with homosexuality. This is dealing with phallic worship. That's what they're putting to their nose. And I'll just leave it at that. All right. So here's the punishment. Therefore will I also deal in fury. Mine eyes shall not spare, neither will I have pity. And though they cry in mine ears with a loud voice, yet will I not hear them. So again, the branch to their nose is referring to phallic worship. And again, when I played that clip about the Ein Sof, the Shekinah, it's saying that the Most High is supposed to have both male and female body parts. So the phallus, which you saw there, which is supposed to mean the foundation, and you saw the Shekinah or Shekinah or Shekinah, So anyway, so in these secret chambers, right? This didn't stop there, because we dealt with the perversion. We dealt with them bringing another Messiah inside the temple. We see that they're bringing phallic worship and perversions inside the temple. We see that they're doing all kinds of witchcraft and stuff inside the temple. Also in these secret chambers, decisions are made to change times and laws. See, many of our brothers and sisters, this is where we have to go deeper in our studies, because they'll just focus on the Shabbat. See, look at it. They changing the times and laws. That's what the scripture means. It goes deeper than that. They change in times and laws, not just the times that we worship, right? They changing all kinds of things, even how they define marriage to this day. They redefine the marriage to this day. And we'll deal with that as we get to it. We will deal with it a little bit, but when we do episode 4, I'll get into that portion of it because we got a lot to unpack. So anyway, in the secret chambers, decisions are made to change times and laws. And guess what, family? Most of the laws that these politicians, especially when it's something that's really controversial, they know it. When do they pass these laws? When everyone is asleep. They pass it in the wee hours of the night. You ever notice when a decision is coming down, especially whether or not to take something to the grand jury about our ancestors or brothers and sisters rather getting murdered by the law enforcement, the prosecutor always wait till what? The evening on a Friday for the most part to bring the bad news so that way they can get out of Dodge, right? So in these secret chambers, decisions are made to change times and laws. Let's go to Daniel chapter 7, verse 25. And he shall speak great words. Now we're dealing with Hasatan. We're dealing with the spirit of the anti-Messiah, the anti-anointing. That's what it really means, because we have to understand when the Messiah said that there would be false Christs or false Messiahs. Basically, you have to understand there are going to be so many people saying that they are anointed. That's the buzzword in the church. Everyone want to prove that they're anointed. Oh, such and such just have such an anointing on them. That's the deception. That's what we need to put inside the text. That should be the translation. This so that way we get a better understanding to open up the eyes of our lost brothers and sisters that's getting caught up in these delusions. It's going to say that there's going to be so many false anointed people, so many that's going to be puffing themselves up saying that they are the anointed. All right, because that's what Messiah means, the anointed. Okay, so he shall speak great words, Malai, against the Most High, and shall wear out Bala or Balaa, the instead of saints is actually Quadayash, right? Which means holy people of the Most High. Not the saint stuff. It's actually referring to the holy people, Israel, right? We're out Israel, the chosen people of the Most High, and to think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand unto a time and times and the dividing of times. That's why the Messiah told his disciples, those that endure to what? The end shall be saved, right? Remnant, come on, remnant. Come on, remnant. We're the remnant, right? The surviving portion. That's what the remnant is. We have to be the surviving portion. The surviving portion is going to endure to the end. The first shall be last. The last shall be first. Guess what? Those that endure all the way to the end, guess what? We're going to get bumped up to the front of the line. The surviving portion, the remnant, the true understanding of what it means when he says the first shall be last and the last shall be first. He's dealing with the remnant. But anyway, this is what it's talking about. This is what it's referring to. Going to change times and laws. Then we just see this from President Biden, right? Then we just see this from President Biden when he tried to wear out those that decided, our brothers and sisters that we decided and others that's not part of our community said, you know what? We're not going to take that shot. We're not going to take that shot. We're not putting that stuff inside our bodies. So what did they begin to do? They began to what? Come up with all kinds of mandates. They began to come up with all kinds of laws, changing times and laws, trying to wear us out by saying, hey, you know what? If you choose not to get this stuff inside your body, then you're going to have to what? Every week, you're going to have to be tested to see if you have it every week. Guess what? To make you get tired. Oh, well, you know what? You're going to have to start paying for the test to make you get tired to say, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired of these tests. Let me go take this stuff and put this poison. That's what we saw this play out right before our eyes. President Biden, that's right. I'm saying Biden, right? You know, they, right, push this nonsense, and they were putting pressure on our brothers and sisters, right? To they were trying to put the pressure on our brothers and sisters to do what? Succumb to and compromise ourselves, right? Compromise ourselves, get worn out, and say, hey, you know, I may lose my job, I may lose this, I I may lose that, right? So when I say Sister Carol Gordon, I'll do a separate teaching on that because it's a lot to go into, and I could give you actual sources, and we could break down that whole text from etymology perspective from the Hebrew and some of the other stuff I have that I could actually give you the breakdown. So we'll do something especially on that topic, and we'll go into that. Now I'll explain that to you and everyone that's watching. All right. So appreciate you for the question. All right. So let's continue. Right. So here we go. Times and laws. Right. So I want to start here. What is the Talmud? Right. I'm going somewhere with this. Right. We're still going to deal with call no man master. We're about to hit that. What is the Talmud? Right. Before I give you the actual facts of what the Talmud is, I want you to hear with your own ears, and I want you to listen with intelligence. Let me play a few clips and we'll get into it. Here we go. Let's see. All right, let's play the first clip. You saw this clip, but let me play it again. This is the rabbi saying that without the oral law, without the Talmud, he said Judaism. He said basically everything that's being done will be voodoo. Listen to what he says.
We would not know how to live on the Sabbath if it were not for the oral law. We would not know what the laws of the dietary laws of kashrut are if it were not for the oral law. We would not know what the tefillin, what the boxes on our arms and heads that we wear every morning in our prayer service, what they're supposed to be. And in fact, all of Judaism would be completely mysterious, would be voodoo if it were not for the oral law.
So basically, he just said that the Talmud, without the Talmud, just having the Torah, we would be practicing voodoo if we just had just the Torah. So without the Talmud, right, everyone will be practicing voodoo. Now listen to these next set of clips that I'm going to play. Listen closely, family. Listen closely. You have to listen with intelligence. Shammai or Shammai, which means listen with intelligence. Now pay attention to what this next rabbi is going to say to explain the Talmud. Here we go.
We Jews believe that when Moses went on Mount Sinai, he really received two Torahs, so to speak. One is the written Torah that we know as the Chumash, or the 5 books of Moses. And the other was an oral Torah, or explanations of those 5 books and all the rules and regulations and understandings of Jewish life. In addition to the 5 books, the revealed books of the Torah, the written Torah, includes also the writings of the Jewish prophets and a selection of writings called Ketuvim, the writings, which consists of books of history, books of revealed poetry like the Psalms, and also books of wisdom like Proverbs. And this constitutes the revealed written Torah. What about that oral Torah? So to understand the oral Torah, you have to understand the ways in which the written Torah is, so to speak, incomplete. Imagine, for example, you were to be confronted with something like this. This is the schematic diagram for my gas fireplace. Now, if you understood schematic diagrams and you were an electrician, you could look at this immediately and know immediately how to install one of these things. Well, I don't have that background, and so I can't do that. What I need is I need a teacher. I need somebody to teach me the system, to help me to understand what these terms mean, what these symbols mean, and with that, I'm able to actually do what I have to do. The same thing with the Torah. There are many things in the Torah which are left unclear, and we have many commentaries that we study with, which would help us to be able to understand what the text says. But we also have a tradition of oral interpretation and understanding that goes all the way back to Moses and is passed on from teacher to teacher to teacher to teacher, all the way down to us. that tradition remained oral up until about the 2nd century. Once in the 2nd century, when the world began to be a little bit more unstable under Roman rule, the rabbis decided that it was time to start to write down the oral law. And that took a number of different forms. It took the form of midrashim, which are stories or narratives, really mostly on philosophical points of the Torah. There are also midrashim that dealt with law, and ultimately, the ultimate production of the oral law was the Talmud, a huge collection of the lectures and discussions of rabbis over a period of about 400 years.
See, this is the stuff that you have to pay attention to. And I'm playing this for a reason, because you heard what they said, that with that Moses was giving the Torah, but it was incomplete. Right? So he made mention that they believe that these oral things that they put together, that these are the things that was given to Moses. He said that this was something that they put to writing in the 2nd century. But I'm going to show you with their own sources to give you an idea when the Talmud began to be written down, right? They mentioned tradition. They mentioned philosophical. They mentioned all kinds of things. But guess what? They made it clear without the Talmud that the Torah is incomplete, that the Most High did not give clear instructions. So they came up with all the stuff, their philosophies and all that other stuff, to fill in the gap. So now their orator supposedly is now a written Torah. So now that's saying that we have 2 written Torahs. You see where I'm going at with this, family? That's why it says, if it's possible, even the very elect will be fooled. And many of our brothers and sisters is teaching this Talmudic doctrine on our brothers and sisters. And they're using a number of different tools to basically come at our own brothers and sisters. Before you know it, they are denying the Messiah. Do you know, if you Freemasonry, guess what? It's going to take you into the Kabbalah. All of that is all part of that. The Talmud, all of that is part of that. Right? I could prove it, and I proved it in the glow. But let's continue on here. I want y'all to pay attention here. He said the Talmud was written in the 2nd century. So let's see if he's correct on that. We could prove that he was wrong on a number of other things, but this is the 1906 Jewish Encyclopedia, right, on the Talmud, right? Thalamad, right? Lamayad, right? And this actually, and anyway, I'm not going to break this down in Hebrew, because this would make the Talmud, right? So anyway, but we see here, this is what it says about it. Name of 2 works which have been preserved to posterity as the product of the Palestinian and Babylonian schools during the Amoraic period, which extended from the 3rd century to the 5th century. Wait a minute. He said the 2nd century. But we're seeing that these writings came into existence between the 3rd to the 5th century. This is getting into the Middle Ages right here. These are not ancient works. This is their own family. This is why we have to pay attention to the details. Right? Name of 2 works which have been preserved to posterity, because you have the two Talmuds. You have the, as you see here, the Yerushalmi, which is the Jerusalem Talmud, and you have the Babylonian Talmud. So it says product of Palestinian and Babylonian schools during the Amoraic period, which extended from the 3rd to the 5th century, all right, CE. One of these compilations is entitled Talmud Yerushalmi, in other words, Jerusalem Talmud, and the other Talmud, Babli, in other words, Babylonian Talmud. Used alone, the word Talmud generally denotes Talmud Babli, but it frequently serves as a generic designation. Generic, right? Remember when I broke down the word Catholic? The word Catholic, the word Generic goes hand in hand. So when you see the word Catholic, you see the word universal, you see the word generic, and generic comes from the primitive or the Proto-Indo-European word gene, which means beget. In other words, planting seeds. Oh, you see the prophecy in Matthew's, right? The seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman. You see how all of this is coming together? All right. So we see that this Talmud was not written right in the 2nd century. It was put together between the 3rd and the 5th century. Right. These are their. This is their Torah. This is what they go off of. Right. The Most High didn't need all of this stuff right here. The Most High didn't give them all of this stuff right here. This is what they created. Let's continue. Let me show you the importance. See, this is why we have to pay attention to the details. I'm going somewhere, right? Netanyahu promises Talmud will be Israeli law. Let me show you here. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reportedly revealed at a Likud conference on Wednesday some remarkable facets of the basic law he submitted last Thursday, which would enshrine Israel's status as the nation state of the Jewish people, which Israel, if you go back and watch some of the older lessons I gave, Israel was supposed to be called, according to them, they was trying to get to be called the new Jewish state. But President Truman crossed it out and wrote in the state of Israel. Right? That's a fact. That's in the archives, the National Archives. But anyway, the new law also would establish what? The Talmud, the core of Jewish law. So not the Torah, not the laws that was given to Moses, not those, not the law, statutes, and commandments, not those things, but what? This so-called supposed oral Torah that was given, because they teach that Moses was given 2 Torahs, a written and the oral. And the oral was never written down until supposedly, as they would say, the 2nd century, which we have here, their document is saying something totally different. I could take it a step further, that it was written even newer. It's not as old as we think. We could go further to get into like the 7th and the 8th century, right? But anyway, right? It says that here, the new law the new law also would establish the Talmud, the core work of Jewish law, as an official basis for Israeli state law. So now they're saying that this will be the law of that land, Israeli. That means, remember, we started off, these are not blood descendants of the people there. This is just saying that they were born there, but they're not the originators there. They're not the original people there. That's all Israeli means. They were born there, but they're not the actual people. That's why they never call themselves Israelites. Going to the Jewish Almanac, page 3, it says that, the word Jew should never be used synonymously with Israel. And it said that the Hebrew Israelites, the Hebrews at that time, they were not Jews. They would say they were not Israelites for that matter. So it tells you literally, the Jewish Almanac 1980. Put that in your repertoire. Put that there, so that way you can have that as a source. So Israeli means that you are not blood descendants of the people of the book, not our blood descendants, not related to us, but you are just merely born into the territory. Doesn't that sound like Ezekiel chapter 47, verse 20 through 22, right? So they came up with that construct to refer to sons of strangers. All right. Anyway, I'm going geek mode. I am going to, and this is what he says here, I'm going to personally be involved in the law defining the state of Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people. Netanyahu reportedly told Vider, it is a very important law that will influence how Israel will look in the future, right? Change the people, change their laws, even change the Messiah. right? And to look for a different Messiah. Let's continue, right? In the secret chambers, right? Decisions are made to change times, laws, and also present another Messiah. Then we see that in the secret chambers of Ezekiel chapter 8, present another Messiah. Let's go to Matthew chapter 23, verse 1 through 10. I'm going to read it. I'm not going to go into it, but I want y'all to pay attention here, right? Because now we're getting ready to go into the thick, right? We're getting ready to go into the deep water here. Now we're going to bring it together, right? How they created a Messiah, destroy our Messiah, destroy the true Messiah, right? And insert or introduce theirs. So let's go to Matthew chapter 23. I'm just going to read it. I'm not going to go too do much commentary on it because for the sake of time. But it says here, then spake Yahushua, in other words, Jesus the Christ, to the multitude and to his disciples, saying, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. Who are we dealing with? The scribes, those that are writing, the writers, right? The Pharisees, right? These are leaders, right? Sit in Moses' seat. All therefore whatsoever they bid you observe, that observe and do, but do not ye after their works, for they say and do not. In other words, you have people want to look like Moses, want to sit in front of the people like they're a type of Moses. They want to pump themselves up, trying to barf out all these things for everybody else to do, but they're not doing it. Oh, let's break this down. Doesn't it sound familiar? This is going to sound very familiar on some of the behaviors of our brothers and sisters. Actually, you even see this inside the church and many churches here. But notice what it says here. Let's go to verse 4. For they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. In other words, they good with putting weight on other people. They good with casting stone. Putting weights. just putting all kinds of crazy stuff on people, right? But not doing anything to help, right? Nothing. They causing problems. Even how many are poorly understanding the truth about the law, statutes, and commandments. Many of them taking it way out of context. This is how they coming up with all kinds of perversions to try to seduce the women. They got all kinds of crazy stuff out here that is not biblical. Right. So when we see changing times and laws, that's not just for the Europeans. That's not just for those that are not blood descendants of Israel. We already proved you have blood descendants of Israel doing all kinds of crazy stuff in the temple. All right. So that's why the Messiah warned. He said wolves in sheep's clothing. In other words, that delusion going to look just like you. But their agenda, their spirit is going to be completely different. Now we're dealing with the spirit of Esau. Anyway, so for they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves would not move them with one of their fingers. Verse 5, but all their works they do for to be seen of men. Whoa, wait a minute. Everything they do is to be seen of men. For they make broad their phylacteries or whatever, putting straps on their arms, right? Trying to remind themselves of the law, statutes, and commandments, not these big boxes over their head. That's a whole nother discussion. And enlarge the borders of their garments. Guess what? They got on the longest fringes. That's what it's talking about right here. They got on the longest fringes. See, I had some of our own brothers within the community saying all kinds of foolishness, wearing what? Fringes. What's the purpose of the fringes? Supposed to remind you of the law, statutes, and commandments, right? And guess what? They're wearing fringes and they're breaking the law, statutes, and commandments. So it's saying here they looking the part. They got their long fringes. We're seeing that today. A lot of our brothers and sisters got all kinds of nice fringes on their garments, but they way out in left field. Right? It says, and love the uppermost rooms at the feast, and the chief seats in the synagogue. So they love to be seen. They sit at the top. They want everybody to be seen. Doesn't that sound familiar? In most churches, you got what does the pastor and his ministers, or the pastor and the first lady, where do they normally sit inside the ministry? Right up on the up in the pulpit. right? That's where you had the pulpit lifted up, raised up, and they sitting right up there, right? So we see that, right? We see that want to sit in the chief seats, but guess what? That's not just in the church. We see a lot of our brothers and sisters, right? Starting with the brother. I'm not even going to say the sister, but many of the brothers got their table sitting up right at the front, got it raised up, right? Want to be seen in front of the people. Hey, the Messiah is calling this stuff out right here. They want to be in the chief seat, especially when the feast days come, because everyone is coming from all around to honor the feast days. They want to be seen. They want to look like a type of Moses. All right. Anyway, let's continue. Right. It says here, and call no man your father upon the earth, for one is your father which is in heaven. Family, this is not a contradiction. With this text, we already gave the answer to the text of who they're referring to, because it'll be a complete contradiction, because the scripture tells us to do what? What does the scripture tells us about who we need to honor, right? Far as in terms of our parents, right? So can you guys just type, what does the scripture says about honoring who? So that way our days will be long on the earth. Who is, just type it in. Let's see if you guys get it correct. Who are we supposed to honor? All right. Let's see if you guys are going to type it in. All right. All right. All right. See one person answer. Let's see who else going to answer. We'll go through it here. All right. Let's see. Let me, as they coming in, right? Let me see. Let's see who got this answer correct. And I'm going to show you here. Let's start with the first one, right? All right. Let me see who put the last one here. Right. All right. Here we go. Because some of you guys got it wrong. Let's see. Let's do a check here. Let's check the answers here. Ari on Yah, father and mother. You got it correct. My cousin Ruhaman. Guess what, Ruhaman? You got it incorrect. The proper text says, honor thy what? Father and thy mother. Right? Not mother and father, right? So you got it incorrect, right? Have to give you the and right. I got to put one here for getting it incorrect, right? Sister Carol, she got it correct. Honor the father and the mother. That's the proper order, right? Father and mother, right? Naturally, we've been taught to always put mom first, right? And we could connect that to the Willie Lynch letter, the syndrome, that the agenda, all to minimize the father, to make sure that we are programmed that we'll always put mom first in terms of the order of the house, the structure of the house. So let's see. Charlotte Williams got it wrong. Pensy Lola Yah bless got it wrong. Woman of God, father and mother got it correct. Joy, father and mother got it correct. Bobby Arnold, unfortunately, my brother, got it wrong. Let's see here. Abawa Amar. Okay, you tried, man. You put father there. I'm gonna give you half because you didn't put mother in there. No, I'm gonna give you wrong because you didn't mention the moms. All right. Let's see here. Glory Yah answered the correct. Major answered the correct. Davion Murphy, mother and father answered it incorrect. Amir Yisrael, father and mother, that's correct. All right, you guys are catching on, right? So we supposed to, that's the proper order, right? Not saying you or loving one less than the other, but the way that the scripture is read is what? The order of the house, father, mother, that is the proper order. Okay, proper order. But we've been programmed to minimize the importance of dad. So many will always put, or quite naturally put mother first. And I use this as an icebreaker. And I know of several ministries I've done this at. It's been times where every last one of them got it wrong and tried to argue with me until they went and opened up the text. All right. So the scripture tells us that we are to honor our father, right? And our mother. So, but here it says, and call no man father upon the earth. right? So who are we? What does this mean? Is it a contradiction? No, because they're dealing with who inside this text. The Pharisees, the Sadducees, those that want to pump themselves up, those that want to put themselves in a position of Moses, those that are trying to be a type of Messiah, want to be the anointed one. Because Moses, Masha, right? When you look at Masha, it means what? He was passed through the water, right? Passed through the water. Masha is when we see the Egyptian meaning of it, actually means son of the father. But Moses could not take on that name, that meaning of that name, because he was not from the lineage, the bloodline of the Egyptians, right? So his Pharaoh's daughter took Moses, right, and said, "Hey, I'm gonna give you the name Masha, but guess what? The name is going to mean taken through the water, taken from the water." Right. And so when we look at Mashayak, we deal with anointing. All right. So you can still see Masha, primitive root there. Okay. So anyway, bringing this together. So this text is not telling you not to call your biological father or dad. And even if they're not your biological father, but it's telling us do not put them on a pedestal. Do not worship these guys. Do not put them in the same breath of our Father, our Abba Yahweh, right? Like when we see the Pope, because the Pope name in Latin is Papa. This is where you get pops from, right? We're not supposed to put anyone on a pedestal. That's what this text is saying. Call no man master, right? As well. So it says, call no man father upon the earth, for one is your Father, which is in heaven. So the Messiah making it clear, don't put no one in that space, right? Because the Catholic Church teach that the Pope has the power of both temporal and spiritual. No, he don't. He don't have that type of power, right? So call no man your father, right? That's what it means. That's why we have to be careful with these so-called coverings, right? This sonship, right? Because that sonship doctrine is a 19th century doctrine that was created to push this orphan mentality. And now you need what? A father in the ministry, a spiritual father that's going to be over you. Nope. Anyway, let's pull this in. So verse 10 says, neither be ye called masters. Let me say that again, right? Neither be ye called masters, for one is your master, even the Messiah, the Christ. So you guys remember this, and I'm just going to give a refresher, and we're going to get into a key portion of this text. We get in there, right? 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 5 and 7 through 7, right? This is what these so-called wannabe anointed people, right? Men will try to force their women, so to speak. I'm not even call them men. These knuckleheads, these rebels, trying to force their women to call them master. This suppressive term, and I'm going to show you what master really means. But let's go to 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 5 through 7. For after this manner in the old time, the holy women also who trusted in Elohim adorned themselves, being in subjection unto their own husband, even as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Adonai or Adonaiah, whose daughters ye are, as long as ye do well, and are not afraid with any amazement. Likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge. Give honor unto thy wife. Give what? Honor unto your wife. Honor is interchangeable with the Hebrew word sham, right? Sham means reputation. It means character. It also means fame. It means glory. The Hebrew word, right, where we see honor and glory, right, is kabod. So it's saying give a good reputation to your wife. Give a good name to your wife, right? Not all of this suppressive stuff, trying to have your wife call you master, not trying to treat your wife like she's your property, beating on your, no, that's not scripture. Giving honor unto the wife, singular, as unto the weaker vessel, the wife of thy youth, singular. This is not saying that she's mentally weak. No, this is saying this is dealing with physical, right? and as being heirs together. Being what? Heirs together. No, it's not about you as these individuals want to make it about themselves, sitting up, trying to pump themselves up in high places. And as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. Keep suppressing the women, prayers will never be answered. So let's deal with the Greek definition of master. Here it is, real quick, and then we get into the Hebrew. Kurios, which means by implication, Mr., a respectful title, as in sir. So it's not this suppressive thing that we see today that we've been subjected to. Why would any one of our brothers try to force this stuff on our sisters, knowing how we've been suppressed by massa, which means the Hebrew word means oppressor, right? Massa comes from the word nasa or nasa. Nasa in Hebrew means to test. It means to exploit. It means anyway. So let's get back to this. Why would you want to have anyone call you master? See, this is getting into that Christ complex. This is getting into this want to be anointed. This is getting into this puffed up mentality, right? Let's continue. All right. The Hebrew definition of this word, right? Right. I'm going to focus on right here. Superintendent of household. That's the key definition. Superintendent of the household, the leader of the house. See, we got many people want to be superintendents of their house, but they don't, the house is not in their name. Even though their own apartment's not in their name. But you want to be referred to as the superintendent of your house. See, Sarah was saying that, hey, Abraham is the mister of her home. He is the superintendent of the home. Put it in this proper perspective. All right. All right, here we go. So the Hebrew word for master, Adonai or Adonaiah, is used as a salutation of respect, such as Mr. or Sir. Now, let's go into the etymology of the suppressive word master, right? Now, this is the noun, a man having control or authority, a teacher or tutor, right? Great. But let's go into the verb. Let me fast forward to the verb. Now, I want y'all to understand this. The 12th century definition of this word, 12th century, to get the better of, prevail against, reduce to subjugation. So guess what, family? Guess what? Women that are referring to your allowing these knuckleheads, these rebels, to have you call them master. What you're telling them is that they got the better of you, that they have prevailed against you. Now they're reducing you to subjugation. So the Messiah is saying, hey, don't call these knuckleheads, don't put them on these pedestals, because now you're allowing them to get the better of you. You're allowing them to prevail against the truth. You're allowing them to reduce you you to subjugation, to be subjected to them. That's what master means. From a European perspective, to get the better of, prevail against, reduce to subjugation. Not a single person in our community should be using that term for anyone as a positive thing. Anyway, so let's deal with the spirit of active hostility. All right, we get into a key portion here. We're almost done. Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. Here we go. And I will put enmity, ayabah, between the remember, active hostility, and the woman, and between thy seed, Zara, and her seed, Zara. It shall bruise Shawap thy head, and thou shalt bruise Shawap his heel. Right? A bruise can be very subtle. You can feel a bruise, but you may not see a mark there. See, that's when we start dealing with this word. There's a lot of bruising that have happened to this word in terms of when we start dealing with how certain things were translated or put into these commentaries. That's why we have to make sure we are going into the actual Hebrew itself to make sure that we are accurate with our teaching, right? Because many, in these commentaries have put bruises on your understanding. You don't even realize it's hurting you. It's hurting you. It really is giving you giving you a butter knife, or they got a gun when you're dealing with spiritual warfare, which we're dealing with right now. But again, I will put enmity, in other words, active hostility between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. Okay. So now let's deal with the destruction of the true Messiah. I had some other stuff here, but I pulled it out because I didn't want to make the lesson much longer than what it is. So let's go to the Talmud. Let's see what the Talmud say about the Messiah. Because see, the Talmud acknowledges the existence of the Messiah, right? But also the Talmud profaned the existence of the Messiah. See, when I would deal with non-Messianics, right? Because they'll say, hey, I'm non-Messianic. I don't believe in Christ. He never existed. But guess what I do? I've been doing this for years. I actually had to bring this attention to the attention of some rabbis, right? But anyway, the Talmud recognized the existence of the Messiah. They recognize it. But I'm going to show you how they profane the Messiah as well. So just because someone recognized the existence of the Messiah doesn't mean that they believe in the Messiah. Don't get caught up in that. Because you got people in the conscious community say, hey, believe in the existence, believe in the historical Christ, right? That's a term that a phrase that Bart Ehrman, right? The Professor Bart Ehrman began to push, right? He don't believe, right? He can't. He teach what? He teach inside this the colleges. He's teaching theology. He's teaching this among the college students. But again, he say he believed in that the historical Christ existed. He said it got multiple records to prove that. But just because you prove that the historical Christ or a historical Messiah truly exists, believing in him is another thing. So this is where you have to be careful, family. Don't get caught up when somebody say, hey, I believe in the existence of him. Nor are you following him? All right. It says here, it was taught on the eve of the Passover. On the eve of the Passover, Yeshua was hanged for 40 days before the execution took place. Right? A herald went forth and cried, he is going forth to be stoned because he has practiced sorcery and enticed Israel to apostasy. So notice they acknowledged the Messiah, but they're not saying anything good about the Messiah. They was teaching that he practiced sorcery, that he's leading Israel into falling away from the Most High. Anyone who can say anything in his favor, let him come forward and plead on his behalf. But since nothing was brought forward in his favor, he was hanged on the eve of the Passover, right? Well, I retorted, right? But anyways, it says, do you suppose that he was one for whom a defense could be made? Was he not a mesith, in other words, enticer, concerning whom the scripture says, neither shalt thou spare, neither shalt thou conceal him. So they're not saying anything complimentary of the Messiah. They're not saying anything complimentary of the Messiah. So be careful of these wolves in sheep's clothing that are seducing so many of you guys, thinking that, hey, they recognizing, showing in the Talmud that the Messiah existed. But no, they profaning our Messiah. They're slaughtering our Messiah so they can introduce to you their Messiah in their image. Here we go. With Yeshua, however, it was different, for he was connected with the government. Our rabbis taught Yeshua had 5 disciples, Mattai, Nakai, Nezer, Buni, and Toda. When Mattai was brought before the court, he said to the judge, so this is telling you that guess what? They executed, passed judgment on the disciples. So I just gave you a historical account that they showing that that the Messiah existed. They acknowledged that he existed. They acknowledged that the historical Messiah existed. But notice how they profaned him. Notice how they profaned Mary. They refer to the Messiah, the Messiah, our Messiah, the true Messiah, as Balaam. It says Balaam also the son of Beor, the soothsayer. Did the children of Israel slay with the word? A soothsayer. But he was a prophet, Rabbi Jonathan said. At first, he was a prophet, but subsequently a soothsayer. Then another rabbi. See, now you get into what is called, when you reading Rabbi A said, Rabbi B say, that is dealing with what we call the apparatus criticus. So now it's saying Rabbi A said, Rabbi B said and Rabbi C said. That's how it's reading here. That's how the Talmud read. That is called the apparatus criticus. But anyway, going back into it. So it says a soothsayer, but he was a prophet. So they're saying they called him a soothsayer, called him Balaam, right? The son of Beor. They also said this about Miriam. She who was the descendant of princes and governors, played the harlot with carpenters, saying that she was sleeping around with multiple men. She was sleeping around with carpenters. She was sleeping around with other men. She was not a virgin. And this is the footnotes of Sanhedrin 106a, right? Notice what it says here, right? And it's just saying that ship draggers, right? In other words, Herford, right? Rashi, it says Christianity in the Talmud, saying that this person suggests on page 48 in this book that he has, suggests that Balaam is frequently used in the Talmud as a type for Jesus. In other words, they use him, Balaam, his name interchangeable for the Messiah, though no names is mentioned to show which woman is meant. The mother of Jesus, in other words, Miriam, may be alluded to, which theory is strengthened by the statement that she mated with carpenters. So it's saying that in the Talmud, they would disguise it by using Balaam versus the Messiah's actual Hebrew name, right? So then when you take this even further, right, you know, when we start understanding this, they profaning the Messiah. They recognize he exists, but look at how they profaning Miriam. Look at how they profaning, because, you know, before you even get to the seed, profaning the mother, saying that she was sleeping all around. Come on, family, we got to make sure we don't get caught up, because you hear and you see the church, right? You see many within the church are now siding with people that don't believe, telling them that, hey, they believe that the historical Messiah existed, but guess what? They don't believe in him. And giving them all kinds of monies, buying their material and everything, financing the delusion. All right, so let's continue. Let's keep this going. Now, let me show you how in these educational systems, how they are really pushing their agenda. Family, see, the deceptions is right under your nose. And let me show you how. This is March 26, 1991. This is when Bush Sr. was in office. Education Day. Well, what's so significant about it? The official implementation of the Noahide laws. Who came up with that term? See, family, if I encourage you to go back and watch the lesson I did on the covenant and dealt with the different so-called covenants, right? Again, there was always one covenant. You had the covenant that was handed down. It didn't say the Most High wrote a new covenant. It said he established this covenant with Noah. In other words, he stabilized that covenant with Noah. Then he took that covenant from Noah, and it was handed down from Noah. Actually, it started with Abraham. It was created with Abraham, handed down to Noah, then handed down to Shem, because you see Shem or Sham, it says that the Most High is what? The Elohim of Shem, right? So it tells you that Shem took on, really followed the Most High, took on the responsibilities of being the priest. Then when we go down from there and we get to Abraham, the Most High did not give Abraham a new covenant. It was new when it was handed to Abraham in his mind, but it said he established his covenant with Abraham. In other words, he stabilized his covenant with Abraham. And guess what? In all of his descendants. So Israel, from Abraham to Israel, where Israel actually was given the covenant, it's not a new covenant. So this tells you the 10 commandments, guess what? They existed before Israel was even born. Right. See, this is when you start getting into systematic theology, when guess what? Systematically, they teach you a process of saying that it's all these different covenants. They teach you about the Davidic covenant, which actually the Davidic covenant is actually part of the overall. Anyway, let me stop here. It's just a bunch of nonsense. This is why when we get to Jeremiah 31, talks about, and your translation says renewed covenant. I mean, it says new covenant, but the Hebrew word is Kadash, not Quadash. Quadash is holy, right? But it's Kadash, right? Chadash means to renew or make new. So the Most High said he's going to take that covenant that Israel broke. He said he's going to make it new again, make it anew. In other words, he's going to take those same 10 commandments. He's not giving something new because it's the same covenant that was given to Abraham. So he's going to take those 10 laws, which is the commandments. You'll see that in Exodus chapter 31 says the covenant is the commandments, the 10. The 10th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the Yod, which means redemption. It means salvation, outstretched arms. So he's going to put those 10 laws. He's going to write it into our hearts. He's going to circumcise our hearts. That's what it means. So now let's get to this Noahide law, the official implementation of this Noahide law. In other words, a law for everyone that they may deem, according to this system, to being the non-Jews. Laws for the non-Jews. You're under the Noahide law. While the Jewish community have their their Talmud, not Torah. They're not following Torah. They're following what? The Talmud. Now let's go into this here. Let's go to this. This is, as you see, Education Day. You see what it says here. This is not me making this up. I put the link here. Matter of fact, let me put this link inside the chat so that way you guys can make reference to it. I'll use this as a point of reference and your leisure, and you could go right back to it. We're almost done here. Let me pull it up. Let me copy this because we're almost done. We got probably about another 10 minutes at the max. And I'm going to open it up to you guys, anyone that want to jump in real quick, and then we'll wrap it up. Let me do something real quick. All right. Let me put the link in the comment section. All right. Let me see here. So that way you guys can have it. All right. You guys could pull that up and you can see exactly what I'm about to read to you. All right. You guys can see what I'm about to read to you. What I'm about to reveal to you. Here we go. All right. Let me adjust this here. All right. Let's get back to it. All right. Here we go. Joint resolution to designate March 26, 1991 as Education Day, USA, whereas Congress recognizes the historical tradition of ethical values and principles, which are the basis of civilized society and upon which our great nation was founded. There's no red flags here so far. Whereas these ethical values and principles have been the bedrock of society from the dawn of civilization, when they were known as the 7 Noahide laws. Now, this was a red flag when I saw this. Like, wait a minute. Why would a bill in Congress have this this portion written inside this bill for this Educational Day bill? The dawn of civilization. Wait a minute. The dawn of civilization. What in the world? When they were known as the 7 Noahide laws. Whereas without these ethical values and principles, the edifice of civilization stands in serious peril of returning to chaos. But it didn't stop there. Notice this, family. Whereas society is profoundly concerned with the recent weakening of these principles that has resulted in crises that beleaguered and threatened the fabric of civilized society. Whereas the justified preoccupation with these crises must not let the citizens of this nation lose sight of their responsibility to transmit. But it doesn't stop there. Notice this right here. These historical ethical values from our distinguished past to the generations of the future. Now, here it is. This is what we're going to get ready to wrap up with. Notice what it says. Whereas the Lubavitch movement has fostered and promoted these ethical values and principles throughout the world. Wait a minute. How do we have the Lubavitch movement involved in this educational bill? And we wonder why we are more and more we are being mistaught. Information is not being properly taught about our community, about us. Why? Because I'm going to show you. Notice here, because it didn't stop here. The Lubavitch movement, that's another trigger or red flag for you to highlight. Whereas Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, right, leader of the Lubavitch movement, is universally respected and revered, and his 89th birthday falls on March 26, 1991. Whereas in tribute to this great spiritual leader, this Rabbi, wait a minute. The Messiah said, call no man father, call no man master, which is rabbi. Watch this, family. Whereas in tribute to this great spiritual leader, the Rebbe, right? His 90th year, he's getting to turn 90 years old. So they're basically setting him up for his birthday. This educational bill, notice what it says, will be seen as one of education and giving. So they're paying homage to this person. Why are they paying homage to? And as you see, his name is Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson. Why are they paying homage to him? Right? Lubavitch movement. You see that here. But it says 90th year will be seen as one of education and giving. The year in which we turn to education and charity to return the world to the moral and ethical values contained in the 7 Noahide laws. And whereas this will be reflected in an international scroll of honor signed by the President of the United States and other heads of states. See, the Messiah warns us about these secret chambers, family. Now, therefore, be it. Didn't I tell you the Messiah warned us about these secret chambers? Yeah, let's explain this here. What is the Lubavitch movement? Because I see Sister Joy said here, let me pull up her comment here, and we're going to break this down real quick. I never heard of the Lubavitch movement before, but I've heard of the Noahide laws. Notice this here. Let's explain what the Lubavitch movement is and why are they paying homage to this Rabbi. Here it is, right? Haaretz, right? This is Haaretz. This is basically the earth, right? That's what this means. The Aretz, right? Or Aratazah. But anyway, notice what it says. Was the Lubavitcher Rabbi really the Messiah? Oh, wait a minute. The Rabbi, right? The Rabbi that was mentioned in the bill, the Educational Day bill. Wait a minute. They're questioning whether or not if he was the Messiah. You already know that Israel done over the past year done recognizing who's supposed to be their Messiah. He's not the Messiah. He's not Messiah of Israel. Far as matter of fact, I'm saying the Israelis, right? Not Israel, the Israelis highlighted their Messiah, but he's not our Messiah. He's not the Messiah of the scriptures. He's not. Anyway, let's see what it says. The Lubavitch branch of Hasidism, known as Chabad, is the most successful and most controversial movement in American Jewish life. Schneerson's message that the Messiah was nigh became the leitmotif, of the movement in 1991. When the Rabbi suddenly, wait a minute, it says what? 1991. Wait a minute, but we see then in 1991, we see an educational bill paying homage to Schneerson. When the Rebbe suddenly and urgently began advocating a series of programs to induce the Redeemer to reveal himself. Wait a minute. So the government was pushing this Rebbe in an attempt to stir up their Messiah. They was actually believing that this guy is the Messiah, and many still believe that he is the Messiah and go by his grave. And guess what? Until they see him return again. Whoa, wait a minute. See, destroy our Messiah, so that way they can push their Messiah. And you see the government involvement in this, and you see the influence even in our educational system, especially when it comes to us, because that whole system is to make sure that they kill the Messiah in us, have us give up hope, to start looking at them as being the solution to the issues within our community, right? Using their education as a form of salvation for our community. Get rid of our Messiah and embrace their Messiah, their image, right? It says here, and urgently began advocating a series of programs to induce the Redeemer to reveal himself. His followers identified him, at least potentially, as the long expected Messiah, and were sure he saw himself in that light. Many Lupovichers, and if you look up Donald Trump's daughter's husband, he's connected to this. The Trump family is connected to this. Many Lupovichers, how many is a matter of dispute, continue to view him as the Messiah, who neither is not actually dead or will return from the dead. So I just showed you a bill in our government paying homage to this guy right here, this Rabbi. Y'all better pay attention to this, family. It's more to it than what you can ever imagine. But many of our brothers and sisters are praying in their prayers, in their temples or churches. They are praying for this government. Many Lupovichers, how many is a matter of dispute, continue to today to view him as the Messiah, who either is not actually dead or will return from the dead. So what is a Rabbi? Let's wrap this up. I got 2 more slides. Here we go. What is a Rabbi? Rabbi means my master or my teacher. Whether you are a small child learning the alphabet or an expert scholar selling the seeds of the Talmud. Notice what we're still dealing with. That Talmud, that so-called oral Torah, now written into a written Torah. You call your teacher Rabbi. See, the Messiah warned about this. There's another meaning to the title Rabbi, one especially associated with a rabbi they call Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov was a leader who not only touched your mind and heart, but could reach you into your essential being and guide you to find yourself. Who is Baal Shem Tov? Here we go. Let me give you more information on this individual, Baal Shem Tov. Notice what this says: 1700 to 1760 is say he founded Hasidism. It says known as the acronym Beshit. In other words, it goes on to say little is known of his life, and few reliable biographical documents exist. According to the legend, he was orphaned while a child and spent a great deal of his time in solitude and meditation in the woods and fields around his home in Podolia for some years. He was assistant to a teacher and act as sexton of the Beit Midrash until his Hit Galut, and which is an important concept in Hasidism, signifying the revelation of one's true spiritual worth and message. He studied assiduously according to wide knowledge of both the revealed law and secret lore. The revealed law, right? We're dealing with the Talmud, right? We're dealing with the secret lore, mysticism. We're dealing with the Kabbalah. We're dealing with all that, the Talmud, the Kabbalah, right? We're dealing with all of that here, which comes from the Merkava system of mystical system. That's a whole nother discussion, but concealed his knowledge, affecting the personality of a simple, unlettered Jew. He traveled in Podolia, Volhynia, and Galatia, Galicia, excuse me, where by virtue of his prayers and amulets, wait a minute, by virtue of his prayers and amulets, that is there for the reason, because it goes on to say, dealing with these amulets, that's why the asterisk is there. He achieved a reputation as a healer and a comforter to those in need. Hence the appellation Baal Shem Tav, which means master of the good name. Master of the good name? I don't know. Why you call Messiah good? Didn't he say that to the rich young ruler? He said only the Most High is good. Right? Tawab. So it says abbreviated to the sheet, right? The charms that he prepared contain only his own and his mother's name. So we're dealing with charms, we're dealing with amulets, right? But notice this, right? And this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with enchanting, because Baal Shem Tav, this guy, Baal Shem Tav, right? He dealt with enchanting. He dealt with mysticism. And we're going to close out with this right here. Our rabbis taught it is permitted to consult by a charm the spirit of oil or eggs. Now, many of you guys, guess what? Easter's getting ready to come up. Guess what? Many are going to be railing against the church, saying, hey, look, they're going to be making Easter eggs. But guess what? You're forgetting about another group that deals with enchantments, right? Dealing with what? Eggs. Our rabbis taught it is permitted to consult by a charm the spirit of oil or eggs, but that they give false answer. Incantations made over oil contained in a vessel, right? But not in the hand. See, workarounds. Therefore, one may anoint with the latter, but not with the other. See how they put the workaround? Incantations made over oil contained in a vessel, but not in your hand. So you can put it in the vessel, as long as it's not in your hand, then you can deal with incantations, right? You could get involved in this mysticism and the spell casting and all of this stuff. And this is the footnote so you could get a better understanding. Every plant in the vegetable kingdom was believed to have its own presiding genius, which could be provoked by incantations. And this is giving you a source here, what they believe. So it goes on to say, both eggs and oil were used for purposes of magic and in folklore medicine. So you see here, they're promoting incantation. It said this states the practice. Here it is. You know what I mean? And notice what it says here. It is noteworthy from the present passage that the Talmud had no faith in these charms, no faith in it, but they allowed them to use it. Right? Verse 18, this states the practice, not a ruling, since it may be used as a charm. And we know the Most High spoke against this. He spoke against this. He spoke about using spell casting and getting into witchcraft and all this other stuff. Family, we're going to stop right here. I know I went geek mode with this information, but I want to show you, right, that this is part of the system of destroying our hope. Tear down the Messiah, and we're going to deal with, in part 4, we're going to deal with marriage, covenant, to show how they systematically use that to cast shade on our Messiah, right? So, as you see here, right, you got to be, if you're going to speak against Easter, against the church, deal with it against Judaism as well. The Jewish community as we know it, right? But the key ultimately, this is why the Messiah said, call no man master. And I want to deal with this portion of it as we make this journey together. All right. So I really appreciate you guys. Appreciate everyone for tuning in tonight. I know it's getting kind of late, and I was going to open up the floor here for any observations or any comments you guys want to make, but it's getting kind of late, and I don't want to prolong this. If this is Friday, that's a different story. So I want to just kind of stop right here, and we could pick up over the weekend, and I'll put an advertisement on that. And also those that are in the Richmond, Virginia area, you want to honor Pesach. I'm going to put some advertisement up so that way you guys, if you're in the area or you want to just travel to the area, just let us know. We'll accommodate you. And, you can bring in or honor the Pesach with us, the feast day with us. So with that being said, family, I hope this really blesses you. I hope this giving you clarity. I hope this giving you also some additional things to look out for, not just with the church and Catholicism, but also in this Judaism. All right. So with that being said, family, I really appreciate you guys for pressing and taking time out of your schedule to watch this presentation. And I'm just going to give the bucket to all this crazy teaching and all these false messiahs and those that want to be anointed and all this foolishness. I'm going to give a garbage can to all of it. All right. And I'm going to give it a 3-piece, and we're going to give their order to go. Here we go. All right. Let me try one more time. So with that being said, family, in the words of Moses to Israel, he had to encourage the people when they were getting discouraged. He said to them in Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 to 14, he said, "Fear ye not, stand still, see the salvation of Yahweh." These Egyptians that you see today, this craziness that we see today, it's not going to have power over you ever again. It's not going to be able to be a stumbling block to us ever again. Right? Said the Most High will fight for us, but we have to hold our peace. And the Hebrew word there is karash. And that word means be quiet. We have to learn how to be quiet, family. Can't go back. Can't stay here. Keep moving forward. Shalom.